Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Spider-Man Brand New Day just introduced the new Jean Grey of the MCU, and both she and Spider-Man absolutely doomed the future of the X-Men and all people with powers in Marvel Phase 7 and all future Marvel movies after that, too. It would not be a Spider-Man film if they weren't causing as many disasters as they solve. The movie sets up a couple world-altering events that will have serious negative consequences for all mutants, people with powers, the X-Men characters, and Marvel Phase 7, and it's not even the first time Marvel has done something like this. We also had a couple of tiny but very major disasters in real life too, so thank you to YouTube for helping fix my channel after it got hacked. Unlike Spider-Man and the X-Men, I do not ever wish to repeat any disaster on that level ever again. Careful for spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day if you have not seen the movie yet. During the movie, after William Metzger and Damage Control capture Jean Grey, they're trying to use her telepathy to finish the machine they built using her sister, Sarah Grey. He says that he's mapping the brain patterns of telepaths so that they can replicate telepathic abilities in anyone by making their brains work in the exact same way. You also notice that Jean Grey's telepathy is visualized as pink energy on screen too, just like the comics and X-Men 97. So her powers in the MCU will have a pink tint to them eventually. They almost complete the machine, but before they can finish, it causes her to snap mentally, and she has her own Hulk out mode, the way that Spider-Man has his own Hulk out mode, and the Hulk himself literally has his own Hulk out mode. Where the trauma of the machine and realizing they killed her sister pushes her past her own internal limits she had unknowingly placed on herself with the whole mind-hopping 33 feet problem. She comes into her full Omega level abilities. She's an Omega level telepath in the comics and TK. So for example, her telepathy is more powerful than Professor X's, but he's got way more skill, way more control over his abilities. So until she trains up as much as he has, he can still win in a mental fight unless she has sort of a Hulk out mode like this. Also, unless she also uses her TK during the fight too. We're just talking about telepathy here. She is meant to be more powerful than Professor X. During the movie, she then freezes a 1 kilometer radius around Roosevelt Island with her TK. She's not using telepathy on all these people around the city. She's only mind controlling the damage control people at the controls. Everybody else is just frozen with her TK. So everybody in the city, Ned Leeds, MJ included, that's why she's crying, all those people Punisher is seeing are just frozen and they still have control over the senses and they're aware that they're being frozen and they can't move, but they don't know why or what's happening. Everyone can see everyone else around them being frozen and nobody knows what's happening, just some other disaster to befall New York City after the Sentry in the Void during Thunderbolts. They all remember that too. The Sentry did not wipe their minds, which he actually can do in the comics technically. Jean Grey then eventually lets them all go after Spider-Man makes it into the room with her, and if it wasn't clear, because the movie doesn't really expand on this, if you don't see it, it didn't happen, after she helps Punisher keep Spider-Man alive with her TK until he makes it to the hospital, she does not mind wipe or mess with anyone else after this that she just froze in place a couple of minutes ago. So at the end of the movie, all those people are going about their normal lives, remembering the tragedy of what just happened to them in New York City, being frozen in place for a couple minutes by some super powerful person. Normal people in the MCU have not used the term mutant yet. They just talk about powered people, enhanced people. So everybody around New York City remembers what happened to them, and the news is probably just blaming it on another person with abilities. But the regular news never learned who Jean Grey was, Damage Control never revealed that information, and the government is probably trying to keep the kibosh on that so that they don't learn more about what was happening at Damage Control, because it's all very black box, hush-hush. So it's not like normal people in the MCU now all know who Jean Grey is, only that there's somebody with telepathic and telekinetic powers out there that are really, really powerful and they're afraid of. So this is just the first way that Jean Grey and Spider-Man have screwed the X-Men and the future of the MCU royally. They have doomed them and all other mutants and people with powers in the future. You'll see where this is headed because it's very familiar. They've already done this in the MCU before. That major WTF moment in this movie will become another Sokovia-level incident like Scarlet Witch accidentally killing a ton of people in Captain America Civil War. So think about the consequences of what happened with Scarlet Witch doing that, and now just transpose it onto X-Men and mutants heading forward. Realistically, the US government and the military will probably become more fearful of mutants and people with powers. William Metzger was clearly anti-mutant in the movie and trying to hoard powers and replicate them, take them out of the hands of actual mutants so that the government could control their powers. During the comics, he's also a notable X-Men villain. Other big X-Men comic book villains like Trask, for instance, will be like tech bros in the MCU, trying to solve their mutant agenda using weapons and technology. Look at all these dangerous mutants, we need to protect ourselves. Boom, billions and billions of dollars spent on mutant defense when really it's just anti-mutant agenda stuff. Damage control will become way more anti-mutant, they already kind of seem like they were, and this leads to the second big way Spider-Man and Jean Grey screwed the X-Men and the MCU going forward. Because of them, mostly Spider-Man, but also Jean Grey was partially responsible because they used her DNA to do this. Damage control now has the technology to make universal power inhibiting collars from the X-Men comics that don't require you to place them on their spines or make contact with their spines. That was the big limitation of Spider-Man's power-inhibiting chip, is that he couldn't make contact with the Hulk spine because his skin was too thick. But now that Damage Control has his schematics, William Metzger even says during the movie, "Thank you to Spider-Man, we can now control your powers." Their people can turn those chips into more simple collars that can work on anybody, so literally they can collar Bruce Banner and control his powers much more easily this way now. So it's not just controlling people with mutant powers, it's also controlling anybody with any kind of powers. This is why Bruce Banner earlier in the movie was talking to Spider-Man about the moral ramifications of what he was doing, but Spider-Man was kind of drunk on the idea of it, like the hype of the technology he was creating, that he wasn't really thinking about that down the road, about the consequences of what that might lead to. It's like a lot of tech bros in real life messing with really, really dangerous stuff. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Bruce Banner's other moral conversation that he had with Spider-Man was the idea that he gave him that he didn't need to block his powers. Maybe he was trying to block something that wanted to be expressed, that needed to be expressed. And by the end of the movie, Spider-Man realizes that and embraces his new organic abilities. Also, some people were confused about the collars in Captain America Civil War. Yes, there were collars that were on the characters in that movie, but they weren't blocking their powers. They were simple shock collars that just fried them anytime they tried to use their powers. Power inhibiting technology, like the device Peter makes, literally turns off people's powers at the biological level, no matter how powerful they are. The limitation being, like I said, with the spines. Now Damage Control can fix that, so it's not an issue going forward in the MCU. And Kevin Feige and Marvel love using events like this to carry forward consequences and use it for plot in future movies, drive the drama of future movies. That's why they did the same thing during Captain America Civil War with the Sokovia Accords. That eventually culminated in ripping the Avengers apart. So I think this is also going to lead to more anti-mutant stuff in the future, and it could lead to our Avengers versus X-Men story in some future Marvel movie at some point.
Presume nothing except this.
They're kind of doing a mini version of that during Avengers Doomsday, but only for a couple minutes, with the MCU Avengers fighting the classic X-Men for a couple minutes till they realize that Doctor Doom is the actual villain of that movie. What I'm talking about in the future is that you remember that the new Avengers are run by Val and they're funded by the government too, as well as her shady group. So the idea is that if the government really started to hate mutants, they would call in the Avengers to stop the X-Men. So that's your X-Men versus Avengers in a future Marvel movie at some point. They actually kind of did this during X-Men 97 Season 1 because the Avengers are viewed as very government-friendly, whereas the X-Men are not. The government absolutely hates X-Men inside X-Men 97. More to that fact, even though Yelena at the end of the movie says she was investigating all the shady stuff Damage Control was doing with its human trials, killing Jean Grey's sister, many human rights violations, breaking every single law that there is, I think because Val is running the new Avengers. She's technically Yelena's boss, and she's also head of the CIA, and she had the president's ear. Now that Thunderbolt Ross is out of office, she's probably able to get her hooks into the new president way easier. Fears over mutants will be running so much higher that the government will probably just sweep all those illegal things that Damage Control did under the rug and pretend like it never happened, and Damage Control will be allowed to continue like nothing changes for them. William Metzger escaped, so maybe he'll be wanted for questioning, but I wouldn't be surprised if the government forgives him, quote-unquote, because they're too afraid of mutants. Doesn't that sound like something that would happen in real life too, where the people who seem more like villains are viewed as the heroes just because the government likes them more? They'll become even more anti-mutant to develop the Sentinels with their technology. Other major anti-mutant characters and tech bros from the X-Men comics will pop up, get involved with Damage Control in the future. So we'll start that new X-Men 2028 reboot movie with the new cast of characters they're going to introduce. Reportedly, they've already cast most of those. Maybe we'll learn about who they are at D23. We just found out about Samara Weaving being the new Emma Frost, and Jean Grey is the other first new character that's going to be on that X-Men team. So we already know about a couple of them. But they start that new X-Men 2028 movie with the world remembering what happened on Roosevelt Island, the tragedy, and it's led to dark, dark consequences for everyone. It'll become a catalyst for anti-mutant sentiment, which is a huge thing all over the X-Men stories. Think about all the people she harmed during the course of the movie jumping into their minds. There's the guy that she forced to jump in front of the moving car that got hit by it. A lot of people wondered if he died or if she wound up killing a bunch of other people during the course of the movie too. But I actually think that it's more interesting that that guy who got hit remembers this and becomes hardcore anti-mutant like a lot of other people who are affected negatively by what she did or who remember her jumping in and taking over their minds, their bodies previously, and then not knowing exactly what happened until they see the news talking about a powerful person doing this to New York City. It just drives people more and more to become anti-mutant.
If history has taught us anything, it's that mutants can't be trusted with their powers.
I know there's going to be a lot of questions about what's going to change after Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars because they're warping so much reality. Kevin Feige has talked about them using Avengers Secret Wars to do a soft reboot on the MCU. For the most part, I think the plot of Spider-Man Brand New Day will stick after Secret Wars. They're not going to mess with anything that happened during the movie when we start that new X-Men reboot movie in Marvel Phase 7 after they've changed reality in the MCU. There will probably be hundreds of videos trying to explain how Marvel changes the MCU and their soft reboot works after Secret Wars in a couple years. Do not worry about it that much right now. If you ever watched the Arrowverse actually did a version of this after Crisis on Infinite Earths, so technically Marvel is just doing exactly what the Arrowverse did before, also copying it. During The Flash, Cisco does a great explainer post-crisis for how reality has changed, and they just messed with the world, so some things have changed and some things are the same. I know there's going to be 1,000 other questions about big details in the movie, so please post all of yours in the comments below and I'll try to add them to my future bonus videos. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below and let me know how you think that Jean Grey's actions in this movie are going to cause serious consequences to the X-Men in the future. Whatever winds up happening, I'm sure J. Jonah Jameson will find a way to blame everything on Spider-Man. Forget about Jean Grey, he'll just blame everything on Spider-Man. Now that the movie's been out for a couple days, Kevin Feige has been talking more about the future X-Men, more about Jean Grey stuff, more behind the scenes, more deleted scenes, so I'll start doing more videos about all that stuff as we learn really, really big details. And like I said, D23 is happening in August. I'm hopeful that we might actually get some official announcements about that X-Men 2028 movie, so I will start doing more videos about that as we learn more official information. I just did that hour-long breakdown of all the Easter eggs in the movie. Click here for that, and click here for my new deleted scenes and alternate ending video of stuff that did not make it into the theatrical cut. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.